Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 102 Registrations and Agreements webinar. This is a recorded webinar recorded on October 1st, 2025, and everything in this webinar is up to date as of October 1st, 2025. If you're watching this after that, please make sure to check CAA's website for the most up-to-date information. Okay, starting off with our legal disclaimer, this is a reminder that Circular Action Alliance is not an attorney nor law firm and does not provide legal advice or recommendations. Please do not take our advice as such. Information in this presentation is not substitute for the advice of an attorney. Please seek the advice of legal counsel as necessary. And our antitrust reminder, as with the nature of EPR, there are many competitors on this call, so please do not discuss any of the topics on the right. CAA will not discuss any of the topics on the right in order to comply with federal, state, and international antitrust or competition laws. Okay, some important reminders. As a reminder, this is the 102 registration and agreements session, and this session will focus on how to register and sign necessary legal agreements like the Participant Producer Agreement, or PPA, and State Addenda with CAA. During this webinar, we will also discuss how to register for California, as it does require additional steps compared to other states. However, we will also be discussing the CAISA, but will not be discussing California reporting. This webinar is the second session in our three-part onboarding series. We also have the 101 webinar that provides an overview of EPR, CAA, and resources to help you determine if you should register with CAA. Additionally, we have our 103 webinar that focuses on budgeting for EPR fees, and the session will provide information on how EPR fees are set and information to support internal budgeting. As a reminder, please email producer.support@circularaction.org or submit a case through the Help and Support tab on the Producer portal if you have any questions. As for our agenda today, we will walk through the producer journey, talk about the steps to registration, discuss the participant producer agreement, go over the state addenda, and lastly, talk about California registration. Okay, starting with the producer journey, today we will focus on registration, which is the first arrow in the producer journey. Before businesses begin their registration journey, there are two primary questions businesses need to ask that will help them determine if they are obligated under EPR laws. First is the material associated with my products covered by EPR laws? And second is my business the responsible producer for those materials? EPR laws for packaging and paper vary from state to state, but are generally designed to apply to single-use packaging, paper, and some disposable products. As a first step in the process of identifying whether your company has obligations under EPR laws, companies should review with their attorneys the definitions of each material type to determine whether the materials associated with their products placed on the market in an obligated state are subject to EPR laws. Second, companies should review the producer hierarchy associated with the covered materials to determine if their business is the obligated producer for those materials. If you believe you might be obligated, these are the steps in the producer journey. First, producers begin their journey by registering with CAA. Once you've registered and signed your Participant Producer Agreement, or PPA, you'll receive access to a reporting portal where you'll be able to upload your supply report. Then, after registering and getting access to the producer portal, producers will be able to submit a supply report for the various EPR states they are obligated in. For Oregon, the first reporting deadline was March 31st, so if you have not submitted your Oregon report, please do so as soon as possible. The next reporting deadline was for Colorado on July 31st. Similar to Oregon, if you have not yet reported in Colorado, please do so as soon as possible. The next CAA reporting deadline is for California on November 15th. And for today, we are going to continue focusing on the registration process. Okay, Here is a quick overview of the registration process producers will go through. The first step in the registration process is to complete the registration form on CAA's website. The form will ask you to provide company information and contact information for a primary contact and authorized representative. After submitting that form, CAA will process your information and send your company a copy of the Participant Producer Agreement, or PPA, via DocuSign. Once the PPA is signed, you'll gain access to the reporting guidance and will be set to receive credentials for the producer portal. For each state where you're obligated in, companies will sign a specific state addendum that outlines the state-specific requirements and formalizes your obligation. Not all state addenda are finalized as they are dependent on the finalization of EPR regulations in states where CAA operates. Thus, Oregon, Colorado, and California are the only EPR states that CAA has state addendas for currently. Each state addendum will be developed by CAA and be provided to producers and will include state-specific policies, procedures, rules, and requirements applicable to the producer in that state. State addenda will not be required to access the guidebook, but will be required to submit data to CAA in the producer portal. As a reminder, the Oregon State Addendum, California Interim State Addendum, and Colorado State Addendum are currently being sent out to producers who have signed their PPA and completed registration in those states. After both the PPA and state addenda have been signed, producers will have the ability to submit a supply report in the producer portal. This supply report will determine the amount of fees a producer will pay for the specific state program they submitted for. Invoices for Oregon were sent starting in June of 2025, and final fees for Colorado will be available in November 2025. All right, our stages of registration. Throughout the registration process, CAA uses specific terminology to describe the various stages and agreements producers will need to complete in order to become a member with CAA and a participant in the state program. Our account registration form begins your journey with CAA, and your company will become an applicant as you complete the form and CAA confirms your registration. Once CAA confirms your registration and the Participant Producer Agreement, or PPA, is sent to your authorized representative for signature, the PPA is signed, your company now becomes a registrant with CAA. It is only when you sign a state addendum for a specific state program that your company becomes a participant in that state program and becomes obligated for reporting and paying fees for that state program. In this webinar, we will detail out these specific agreements, starting with the account registration form. So just to backtrack a little bit, we wanted to show the 2025 producer timeline to share what is upcoming for producers remaining in 2025. So I will just go down the line through each state. So starting with Oregon, as I mentioned earlier, they had a producer reporting deadline on March 31st, 2025. So if you have determined that you're obligated in the state of Oregon, please submit your report as soon as possible if you have not done so. Oregon's program started on July 1st, 2025, and they had a bonus A LCA report due for anyone who wanted to submit that. And then looking ahead at Oregon, there will be fees for the 2026 EPR year, and those will be available either in late October or early November, and invoices for the 2026 year will be sent in January 2026. Then looking at Colorado, Colorado had their supply reports due on July 31st, 2025. So once again, if you have determined that you are obligated in Colorado and have not completed your supply report, please do so as soon as possible. The fee schedule for Colorado will be available similar to Oregon in late October or early November, and invoices for Colorado will go out in January 2026. As for California, the registration portal for California opened back on August 1st, 2025, and CAA had a producer registration deadline of September 5th, 2025. But if you have not yet registered in California, you can still do that, and we encourage you to do that so you can complete your reporting. The California reporting portal opened back on September 23rd, and the California report for CAA is due on November 15th, 2025. And then finally, looking at Minnesota, Minnesota had a registration deadline of July 1st, 2025. And if you have determined that you are obligated in Minnesota, we encourage you to complete your Minnesota registration as soon as you can. Okay, so the producer policies are now available. So back in July 2025, CAA published 3 producer policies available in our new producer policies webpage. CAA establishes and maintains policies that outline producer obligations under extended producer responsibility laws and participation with the producer responsibility organization. These policies define the specific requirements producers must meet, covering registration, reporting, and fee payment to maintain or to remain in good standing and fully compliant with state EPR programs and CAA participant agreements. On the Producer Policies webpage, producers can find detailed standards for registration, reporting, and payment applicable to all participant producers registered with CAA. Okay, and with that, we will now dive deeper into our registration process, starting with the account registration form. So to access the account registration form on CAA's website, you can find it on the producer registration page of our website by clicking Register Now or by going to circularactionalliance.org/registration. So who should complete the registration form? So each entity designated by an employer identification number or EIN that has EPR obligations in California, Colorado, Minnesota, and/or Oregon should register. We encourage each obligated entity to register with CAA as their own registration. This means that if your company has multiple EINs that fall under the rules of obligation, you should register separately for each of those EINs. What if you believe you might be exempt? So exclusions are generally categories of materials that are not covered materials under the EPR program. Therefore, there's no obligated producer and no need to register or report. In this scenario, the producer does not need to register, and we encourage those producers to still sign up for a newsletter in order to stay informed. There are also exemptions from the programs that often require approval by the regulator for a proportion of volume that are covered materials in the program or a designation based on size, such as the small producer exemption. So if you have covered materials and are an obligated producer, you would still need to register, sign the PPA, and possibly you may also need to report your material supply if applicable, and ultimately attest to any exemptions annually for each state program in the CAA producer portal. We strongly encourage these producers to register and sign the PPA. You will answer reporting questions in the portal that will exclude you from having to report and pay fees based on the exemptions that you meet. The primary contact should be the one to complete the registration form on behalf of the company and know who their authorized representative will be to add them to the registration form. The primary contact and the authorized representative can be the same person, and if you need to change those designated contacts in the future, please email producer.support@circularaction.org. So what information is required to register? The information that you see on the screen is the data that you will need to register. We'll ask for you to we'll ask for your company information and contact information for 2 key contacts at your company, which will be the primary contact and the authorized representative. For the company information, we'll ask for your company name, the tax ID, address, and website. For your if your company has multiple EINs, we ask that each unique EIN register with CAA, and we'll ask that each individual EIN report. We recognize that some companies have a large number of EINs, so if your company would rather submit one report altogether that represents the supply information for the parent company and all of its subsidiaries, we request that you email producer.support@circularaction.org. We also ask for information like revenue and industry. We use this data for prioritization and understanding the producer landscape. You can estimate your revenue or put in $1 if you don't feel comfortable disclosing your revenue to us. Finally, as I mentioned in the slide before, we ask for a primary contact and an authorized representative. Each company can only have one primary contact and one authorized representative. The primary contact and the authorized representative can be the same person. The primary contact will be the main contact on the account and the contact that CAA will notify on upcoming requirements or requests. The authorized representative is the person who will sign legal contracts like the PPA and State Addenda. And as of March 2025, both the primary contact and the authorized representative can submit supply reports to CAA on the producer portal. Okay, and with that, I will pass it over to Matt to discuss the PPA and State Addenda in further detail.
Great. Let's start with the PPA. A participant producer is someone who expects to be obligated under any of the past EPR laws where CAA has been selected as the pro. Each company must review the definition of obligated producer in each state along with CAA's guidance on the definition of producer to determine their company's obligation. A great place to reference CAA's guidance materials on the definition of producer is our Producer Resource Center, which can be found on our website. The participant producer agreement is sent to producers after completing CAA's initial registration form. The PPA contains the terms and conditions between producers and CAA, outlining the actions to be taken by both producers and CAA to ensure that statutory obligations are fulfilled under state EPR laws. We'll dive deeper into the PPA in the next two slides, but the terms and conditions include CAA's obligations as the pro, the producer's obligations as the regulated entity, that include things like reporting, record keeping, and fee obligation, confidentiality, and dispute resolution, among other contents. In 2024, CAA conducted an extensive consultation process with registered producers, and we have incorporated that feedback into the final version of the document. At this stage, we are not accepting further edits to the PPA. Companies that sign the PPA will receive access to CAA's reporting portal, further guidance, and training sessions hosted by the producer services team to begin preparing in a timely manner for reporting and payment, and the state addenda that must be signed before you are able to hit the submit button on your state report in the producer portal. Now for more of a deep dive on the topic areas of the PPA. So the purpose of the PPA is to establish a working relationship between your company and CAA by outlining consistent terms and conditions between participant producers and CAA. CAA's obligations include administering the program plan in each relevant state, developing a methodology to set fee rates per state, providing producer support for registration, reporting, and fee payment. CAA is also able to register producers on their behalf with state regulators. For example, in regards to CAA's recent September 5th registration deadline in California, CAA will register producers with CalRecycle on their behalf if producers opt in to pro registration and reporting during their registration process with CAA for California. Savannah will talk a little bit more about that process in just a few slides here. Moving on to the participant producers' obligations outlined in the PPA. These include sharing accurate information about the company, reporting data to CAA in states where it signs a state addenda, maintaining accurate records to CAA, Paying fees in a timely manner once producers have signed a state addenda and reported their data. And also, producers are obligated to identify themselves. Importantly, companies that sign the PPA will not be able to report to CAA until they sign a state addendum. We will discuss the state addenda a little bit later in the presentation once we finish discussing the PPA. The PPA also includes confidentiality and signatory clauses. Starting with confidentiality, the producer's information will be protected and may only be viewed by entities who need to know and may only be used for the program. So what does that mean? Some states require the pro to share a list of registered producers, and we will provide that in accordance with the law. We will not share any competitive information externally, including revenue or anything that puts us non-compliant with antitrust laws. Our IT systems are secure, and we enforce secure restrictions on how any data is shared externally. Lastly, for the signatory clause, we are requiring that an authorized representative sign the participant producer agreement. This person is authorized to act on behalf of the producer to bind the company, sign legal contracts, and submit material supply data to CAA. How and when will I receive my PPA? Once registrations are received, that would be filling out the initial registration form on CAA's website. The team will review and send over the PPA to the authorized representative via DocuSign for signature. There have been instances where the DocuSign email is blocked by a company's spam filter, so to avoid any delays or disruptions, it can be helpful to contact your IT team to whitelist the inbound traffic from @docusign.circularaction.org. One thing to note is if a company has an obligated subsidiary with its own EIN, producers should register each of their subsidiary companies individually, as Savannah discussed earlier. By default, if you register multiple subsidiaries, a PPA will be sent to each entity for signature. If you would prefer to have only the parent entity receive the PPA to sign on behalf of the parent and subsidiary entities, you are able to do this. Please reach out to producer.support@circularaction.org for assistance with this. Great, now I'll begin to discuss the state addenda. So the PPA and the state addenda are complementary agreements. The state addenda is what formally obligates you in a particular state. If you do not indicate in your registration form that you are an obligated producer in that particular state, you will not be sent that state's addendum. The state addendum document does obligate producer fees and dues as CAA. Therefore, they are written in conjunction with state program plans. At this time, the Oregon and Colorado state addenda are available for signature, as well as the California interim state addendum. Future state addenda will be made available as state regulations are developed and program plans are completed. The state addendum for Oregon includes the clauses you see here, and in general, other state addenda follow a similar layout. I'll spend a few minutes overviewing the topic areas on the left, starting with definitions. This sets clear definitions of the terms used in the document. Exemptions includes details around the state-specific exemptions, those that are expected to be exempt. We still encourage you to sign this state addendum if you've already registered and indicated registration in this state, as it allows us a paper trail to communicate back to regulators that your company is in compliance. This will allow you to submit an exempt report in a state, because to submit a report, including an exempt report, a producer must sign the corresponding state addendum. Reporting. This has the minimum reporting requirements in Oregon, including the categories and other expectations. Record keeping. This has our parameters for keeping and maintaining accurate records and the audit rights of CAA. Fees. This has details about how the fee rates will be set and an overview of the methodology. To note on the fee section, this does not outline what the fee rates for each covered material category will be. These change each year as the program costs and volumes change each year. We publish a unique fee schedule each year, but do not require a new signature of the state addendum each year. The first fee schedule for Oregon is finalized and has been posted in the producer portal. Lastly, compliance. The Oregon State Addendum outlines CAA's compliance and enforcement duties with respect to the implementation of the Oregon program. In regards to compliance and accurate fees, it's in the best interest of producers and CAA to be able to ensure that all data is accurately reported and that obligated producers are participating. Moving on to the Colorado State Addendum. The Colorado State Addendum does follow similar topic areas that were just discussed in the Oregon State Addendum. So I will not go through each one individually, but you're welcome to pause the video and review the Colorado State Addendum in more detail. Following a comments and consultation period, the Colorado State Addendum was made available for producer signatures in June. Lastly, the California Interim State Addendum. It is now available for producers to sign as of late September. It is only sent to producers who have signed the PPA and have also completed portal registration in the producer portal for California. This registration process includes navigating to the state registration tab and completing the register steps for California. The California Interim State Addendum does follow a similar format as the Oregon and Colorado State Addenda, with the addition of early fees. Early fee rates are not yet finalized, but we have an estimated early fee rate ranges posted in the producer portal under the Guidance and Tools portal article. And as a reminder, portal credentials are issued to producers who have registered with CAA and signed the PPA. Quick note on state addenda versus interim state addenda. So the California Interim State Addenda or addendum just includes the provisions requested during this pre-producer responsibility plan phase, and it does allow CAA the ability to collect early fees and gather initial reporting requirements to successfully draft and adopt the California Producer Responsibility Plan. After regulations are finalized and CAA's Producer Responsibility Plan is developed, CAA will replace the California Interim State Addendum with a more robust state addendum, which will be more similar to what we have already available for Oregon and Colorado. Lastly, before we discuss California registration and pro reporting, how will I receive my state addendum? Just like the PPA, the state addendum is sent via DocuSign to your authorized representative. Only after CAA receives back the signed PPA are the state addenda sent out for signature. Once CAA receives back the signed PPA, the state addenda are sent out along with portal credentials to the primary contact and authorized representative, so you can immediately start to enter your report data in the CAA portal for Oregon and Colorado if you have missed either reporting deadlines earlier in 2025. Now, it is worth repeating, although you can start your state report, producers will not be able to submit a report until they have signed the corresponding state addendum. We ask that you do not forward the DocuSign email sent to the authorized representative to someone else to sign. If you need to change the authorized representative, please reach out to us at producer.support and we will update your company's contact info and resend the state addendum to the correct individual. And now Savannah will discuss California registration and pro reporting.
Great, thanks, Matt. Yeah, so like Matt said, I will now dive into some additional information needed for California registration and pro reporting. So as of August 1st, 2025, California registration opened in the producer portal. Registration in California slightly differs from registration in Oregon and Colorado because in California's draft regulation, obligated producers are required to register with Cal Recycle to comply with the EPR requirement. For producers, you can now use the producer portal to complete the additional registration steps and add California and the required additional registration information to your account. To complete the registration, you will be asked some additional questions, including if you would prefer to do pro reporting or self-reporting. CAA recommends that producers select pro reporting to take full advantage of the services CAA as the pro has to offer. If a producer selects pro reporting, it means that CAA will manage your registration and reporting to CalRecycle. This will result in automatic registration with CalRecycle, aggregated reporting of your producer data, and simplified data submission where you'd only have to report to CAA. If a producer were to choose self-reporting, this means that you would manage your own registration and reporting to CalRecycle. As a producer choosing self-reporting, you would have to register with CalRecycle directly and submit your individual supply data both to CAA and to CalRecycle on your own, rather than having CAA submit everything for you. So some next steps for California. To begin California registration, producers who have registered with CAA start by logging into the producer portal. Once you have logged into the producer portal, navigate to the State Registration tab at the top of your screen and click on the Register button next to California. Please note that if you have already completed your registration in California, the action next to California will state "In progress, pending addendum." Additionally, this is an additional registration step for California, meaning that filling out the account registration form does not mean you have completed your California registration. This is an additional registration step that happens after you have already registered with CAA. Once you've clicked the Register button next to California on the state registration page, you will be asked to provide additional information as seen on the right. This form will have you confirm CAA as your pro in California by selecting yes to the first statement if you wish to have CAA as your pro. It will then ask for you to provide a physical address for your company. This address needs to be based in the US, and if your company is not based in the US and does not have any US offices, you can enter CAA's address. After providing an address, you will select either pro reporting or self-reporting. As a reminder, if a producer were to choose pro reporting, it means that CAA will manage your registration and reporting to CalRecycle. This will result in automatic registration with CalRecycle, aggregated reporting of your producer data, and simplified data submission where you'd only have to report to CAA. If a producer were to choose self-reporting, this means that you would manage your own registration and reporting to CalRecycle. As a producer choosing self-reporting, you would have to register with CalRecycle directly and submit your individual supply data both to CAA and to CalRecycle on your own, rather than having CAA submit everything for you. After completing the California State Registration form, you will click Submit, and now next to Action in the State Registration page next to California will appear In Progress, Pending Addendum, and the California Interim State Addendum, or the CAISA, is now available as of September 23rd and will be sent to your authorized representative via DocuSign for signature. Producers will need to sign the CAISA before submitting their California producer report. So as a reminder, here is the timeline for California for the remainder of 2025. So back on August 1st, 2025, CAA California registration opened on the producer portal. This is where producers will complete the additional steps needed for California registration. CAA is asking producers to complete the California registration by September 5th, 2025, which is now passed. But if you have determined that you are an obligated producer in California, please just complete that registration step as soon as you can. And then by September 23rd, which was a couple weeks ago, the California reporting portal was opened, and now producers have the ability to submit a California producer report. Additionally, guidance similar to guidance producers have received for Oregon and Colorado is also available as of September 23rd. This includes guidance like the California Reporting Portal Workbook and the category definitions and producer definitions guidance. The CAA deadline for producers to submit a California producer report is on November 15th, 2025. Producers will be requested to submit a California producer report with 2023 supply data. After the reporting deadline of November 15th, CAA will continue to provide updates to producers on the next steps for California as we anticipate the regulations for SB 54 to become finalized in early 2026. And then, like I said on the last slide, as of September 23rd, 2025, CAA released various guidance documents for California to support producers with determining obligation and also support with reporting. So those guidance documents are the definition of a producer in California, and this guidance can help support and determine if you are obligated in California. Additionally, there is the covered materials and producer definitions guidance for California, which documents and outlines the statutory and draft regulatory language on covered material definitions. Next is the preparing to report your California supply data. So submitting a California supply data is a little bit different than Oregon and Colorado. So this guidance document provides producers with a comprehensive overview of the information and data required for reporting to CAA in California. Next is the California 2025 Report Preparation Workbook. This is an optional Excel tool that helps producers assemble all the information that they will need to submit on the portal. And then lastly is the California Producer Early Fee Rates Estimated Ranges. These can be found on the producer portal under the Guidance and Tools article, and it is a range of the estimated early fees that will be sent out in August of 2026. Great. And with all of that, we just wanted to remind everyone to stay engaged with CAA. So if you have not done so already, please register with CAA if you have determined that you are obligated for one of these EPR laws. You can do so by clicking the link here or by going to our registration webpage. We also have our Producer Resource Center, which has additional guidance and information to help continue for you to understand if you are an obligated producer and look at guidance documents to further understand obligation. We also have a monthly newsletter that producers can sign up for on our newsletter webpage of our website. And this newsletter sends the latest updates for each state and provides the newest resources that we have available. As always, if you have any questions, you can email us at producer.support@circularaction.org. And this is the second in our onboarding series, the 102 registration and agreements. We also have our 101 onboarding series and our 103 budgeting for EPR fees. And for registered producers, we also have our 200, 300, and 400 series that provide additional details on reporting for the various EPR states. So with that, thank you for listening. And once again, if you have any questions, please email us at producer.support@circularaction.org.